not attempt to think or depression may occur.
Do not attempt to think or depression may occur. Welcome to the Fun with Lund podcast. This week we're coming at you with a very different story. Over the past week since our last episode, we have discovered a tie between Donald Trump and an old Nazi cult. And Stefanie's family was actually involved in that. She's going to talk a little bit about that later, but it's kind of interesting how we got to that. So we started the week off looking for interesting news stories about Donald Trump that we could provide some analysis on. And little by little, that actually led us back to Stefanie's family history and this specific cult that seriously has ties to Donald Trump. So let's go ahead and jump into this initial story, and I think you'll see where we're going with this. So this week, as reported in the Babylon Bee, with the excitement of the 2024 Republican National Convention still in the air, conservative attendees in Milwaukee and nationwide were thrilled to hear the news that the former President Donald Trump was now selling official $250 golden ear bandages. Remember this about the golden ear bandages, because it's going to come back later. The new product was made available by the Trump campaign to convention goers this week, with the initial production run of the high-dollar golden ear bandage quickly selling out. And a campaign spokesperson said the item was initially going to be a limited edition, but discussions were taking place about producing more due to high demand. This is what it looks like. Steph?
I think it is already great. It has a great cover, and also it says that it is made in America. It has 24 karat gold, MAGA gold actually, and it has also the engravings of Trump. I think this is a really cool accessory if you go out and then you just show your ear and you can say, look at me, I'm wearing a 24 karat Band-Aid, which is a MAGA Band-Aid with Trump on it.
Exactly. And this is Trump approved. And notice that it says made in America, not once, but twice. This is also significant. Continuing with the story. It's the hot new accessory every MAGA voter wants, said Trump campaign marketing rep Tate Hunter. Not to be confused with Hunter Biden. But in these circles, you'll notice that a lot of people have very similar names. Just like the golden sneakers that swept the world, our new golden ear bandages will allow people to show their support for President Trump like never before. You too can draw everyone's attention to your ear with a surprisingly large bandage. Keep that in mind. But this one's gold and it has Trump engraved on it. Come on, people. What's better than this? Tate Hunter, very good salesman. And when asked to comment on the new piece of campaign merch, Trump expressed his approval. Have you ever seen a more beautiful bandage, folks? He asked. There's nothing like it. I got my ear bandage the hard way. I don't recommend it. But you can have one of your very own for only $250, and it's gold. Beautiful, shiny gold. Just like the bandage we're going to use to fix this country. It'll be a giant golden bandage, and we're going to do it so quickly. But you can have one, too, and you don't have to get shot for it. And Trump obviously took a shot for democracy. Bless his heart. And at the time of publishing this piece from the Babylon Bee, the Trump campaign revealed each $250 golden ear bandage would come with a small vial of stage blood. Stage blood is fake blood. That's not real Trump blood. It is stage blood. So everyone could reenact this iconic photograph from the shooting. And here's what it looks like. Steph?
There you can see already how great it looks like on a person. And I also think it's great that they actually deliver fake blood, or stage blood, so you can redo the shooting more or less. I think it would make a little bit more of a value, or if he wants to even sell it for more money, he could sell it with a little bit of his own blood, but that would be then a special production or something like that. So let's see. But in general, I think this is a great idea, and it will get people going, and it will be fashionable, and everybody wants to wear that kind of bandage because it's shiny, it stands out, and who doesn't want to stand out?
It has that strong Trump brand behind it. And I think you're making a very good point. If it came with real Trump blood, I imagine that decimal point could be moved over a few places. 2,500, 25,000. I'm just saying, it's a little bit of Trump DNA that everybody might want a little bit of to share with their family. Okay, so here's President Trump with his bandage. He's hawking this whole concept at the RNC convention. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. Because on the surface, this seems like a shameless, capitalistic way for Trump to raise money for his war chest, right? That war chest that is going to be used to wage war against democracy. But is there something deeper? Is there something bigger going on here behind the scenes? Is this indicative of some kind of connection between Trump and his long-lost idol? Exactly. It's a little-known fact that during Operation Valkyrie, when Tom Cruise tried to kill Adolf Hitler, Hitler was injured, and he also wore a bandage on his ear. This is Trump's dog whistle, if you will, to the Aryan nation, to the right-wing extremists, to the neo-Nazis of today, that he is in fact going to take Hitler's policies and drive them right into the heart of the United States and wage war around the world just like Hitler did. And for anybody who doesn't understand that the cult is in full swing and moving full speed ahead, look at these pictures from the convention. All of these cult members of the MAGA group, of the MAGA cult, wearing their ear bandages in support of Trump. And then you also have the high command of the Nazi Party wearing their golden ear bandages in support of the Fuhrer. Steph?
Actually, this reminds me also a little bit of me being a kindergarten teacher. When children come to me when they have an ouchie, they want to have a Band-Aid. And obviously they will get a Band-Aid, so it makes them feel better. And after a couple of minutes, their friends actually come as well and show me old scars or even invisible scars. And they also want to have a Band-Aid, just to, maybe also in solidarity to that other child, but also to make them feel better. And I think actually Trump is onto something about it, because it is a sign he wants to feel better, and also he wants that the nation feels better. And it seems like it's visible, and it can also heal some kind of an emotional ouchie as well. John?
No, it's true. There was certainly an emotional ouchie after Trump got shot. There was an emotional ouchie for the Third Reich after the Hitler almost got killed by Valkyries, by the Operation Valkyrie with Tom Cruise. So, again, taking this one step forward, it's not the first time that we've seen this kind of behavior within these cults. So who can forget the iconic Charles Manson walking into the courtroom with an X on his head? Right? He's a good-looking guy. He looks like a young Jesus, perhaps. But he has this X on his forehead that he carved into his own forehead in his cell during the trial, when he was on trial for leading the cult that killed, I think it was 11 people in Los Angeles. Okay? And then look what happened the very next day with his cult members. They walked into the courtroom themselves and also engraved X's on their foreheads. And if we're honest here, these aren't terrible looking ladies for the 1960s from what you would expect from a cult, but they still took it upon themselves to perhaps harm their body, perhaps degrade their own looks, sacrifice a little bit of themselves for their leader, Charles Manson. Steph, what do you think about this?
I think actually that they wanted to support him in some kind of, like we were talking before, like an emotional support, because he was actually hurt in that kind of sense, because that he got imprisoned and he was all by himself in prison, and through carving something on their forehead, they showed solidarity with him and showed him, you are not alone. We are standing with you. And it's important for us, for example, because sometimes everybody gets lonely. Don't you get lonely, John?
It's true. Sometimes I do get lonely. And as I think everybody out there in the podcast knows, I did about 10 years in prison for armed robbery. And I was lonely when I was in prison. I did have a boyfriend in prison, but it just wasn't the same. I didn't feel like I had that connection to the outside world. And, obviously this was before we met and stuff. But I didn't... There was just a piece of me that was just always lonely. Even when I was in the shower with 10, 15, 20 other guys and a fight would break out and we were all just rolling around wet and naked inside the shower, fighting and kissing and doing what you do in a shower. And part of me was still alone. I had some intimacy, but I was never really fulfilled. And I think if there was somebody on the outside that just showed me that they still cared, then maybe I wouldn't have felt like that in prison. So I see your point. I think for these ladies to come in with the X on their forehead to show support for Charles Manson, their leader and their love, it really is a very kind gesture.
Yeah, look at them. They are smiling. They are like in support for him, because they're like, okay, we show the world that we support him. It doesn't matter what it is, but we love him, and that's all the support we can give him at the moment. And he should realize that and recognize it. So, yeah, I get it.
Okay, this has actually turned out to be a much better story than I thought. This is kind of has a happy ending. That even though he ended up doing a life sentence in prison and died in prison at age 83, Charles Manson was never really alone. There were always these women out there who were supporting him. And as some may know, he actually did get married when he was in prison. By a supporter who felt like he was wrongly accused of the crime. So, man, I wish I really had somebody like that to support me when I was in prison. But let's get back to the issue at hand here, the Nazis. So, as Charles Manson did continue throughout his prison stay, he did have Nazi fans on the outside who wanted to emulate him and be just like him. And you can take issue with Charles Manson's philosophy, you can take issue with what he did, but what you cannot take issue with is that he had some very loyal fans who wanted to support him. And that is beautiful. So this story does have a happy ending. But that brings us to the ties of Donald Trump to what is called the Nazi tongue death cult. And this is an organization that was new to me, but apparently Steph has known about this for a while, and Steph's going to tell us about the Nazi tongue death cult.
Thank you, John. Yes. So the Nazi tongue death cult was established by the end of the Second World War. I know about that because my grandfather was actually part of the Nazi tongue death cult by the end of the Second World War. So he told me a little bit about how they inducted people, and that's actually kind of an interesting induction. So you had to go for a swim, but not just 1 or 2 meters swim. You had to swim 500 meters and have your mouth open and your tongue out, more or less. Yes, you had to have your tongue out while you were swimming those 500 meters. And it depended also in which part of Austria or Germany you were living. You could either swim in a lake or in a river. I would have preferred to swim in the lake if I would do that, because it would be more calmer. But my granddad had to do it actually in the River Inn, which is in Tyrol. And it's not always the calmest river. So at that time, he said it was really dangerous for him because he swallowed a lot of water, and it was like really, it was close that he didn't manage to get into the cult or into the society. Let's say that. Another task was also like you had to go to a cow, open the mouth of the cow, and then bite on the tongue of the cow, because it's Nazi tongue deaf cult. So that's why. And their secret meetings were in barns, since they were surrounded by animals, and the animals covered actually through their noises the talk, what they were talking about.
Yeah, I can picture that. Back when I was part of a secret society, we'd often meet in barns, and nobody could hear us from outside. So the federal agents, the CIA, nobody could hear us because the sounds of our conversation were covered up by the animals, like it's very distracting for the agents. They can't hear you over the animals. For example, there were also chickens. For the morning meetings. So I think the audience needs to understand who the original Nazi tongue death cult leader was in the United States to put this into context. It was no other than Albert Einstein. How could Albert Einstein be part of a Nazi tongue death cult, you ask? He was actually the perfect cover. As a Jew who emigrated to the United States before World War II, he was the perfect undercover asset in the United States. No one would have suspected it. But with him in this iconic photo sticking out his tongue, he showed the symbol to the other death cult members who he was, what he represented, and who he was there to serve. Now, the story takes an even stranger twist when we realize Charles Manson was also a member of this Nazi tongue death cult. In this iconic picture, he's sticking out his tongue with a SWAT sticker on his head, showing allegiance to that Nazi tongue death cult that met in those barns back in Germany and Austria in the 1930s and 40s. A little known secret about Charles Manson is that he was actually a failed musician. So he, as a failed musician, had a lot in common with Hitler, who was a failed artist, with Goebbels, who was a failed screenwriter, and with Einstein, who was a failed electrician. So as this Nazi death cult continued to grow in the United States, we see that Gene Simmons picked up the torch in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And while Gene Simmons does not have a SWAT sticker on his head, what he does have is the Japanese samurai man bun, showing his allegiance not only to Nazi Germany, but to Japan, the other prominent member of the Axis powers. What you'll also notice in the picture is that Fox News is behind this. So Fox News, along with the Nazi death cult, are in league against the United States, representing these Nazi powers. And who else could be a member of this Nazi death cult? No other than Donald Trump. At the rally, Donald Trump stuck out his tongue, showing that his lineage goes back to the 1930s and 40s in Nazi Germany. Steph, what do you think of this?
I think it's great that he did it in some kind of sense, but in the other way, it's also like, okay, since there are a lot of people nowadays aware that there is a secret society, I think he needs to be a little bit more cautious, actually, where he is putting his tongue out, more or less. Because in a rally, there are too many people, and also, for example, to also the journalists and everyone. So I think he needs to calm a little bit down, or keep it a little bit down, since it could take too much waves, and then this could even be the end of the society, which wouldn't be good.
You know, some may say the cat's out of the bag. Others may say the tongue is out of the mouth. So that brings us to the next segment of the show, Rep Your Set. So Stefanie, very much to your point about how we might need to be a little bit more cautious, or about how these Nazi death cult members may need to be a little bit more cautious about how they represent their allegiances or show their allegiances. Much like gangs in the United States might have gang colors, there are now tattoos and other markings that are becoming very prominent and very connected to some of these underworld activities. So what you see here is the old Führer, you see the new Führer, and then you also see a Dr. Mengele type character in the center. And these are tattoos found on people in prison, found on people in everyday society, and they are showing their allegiance to this Nazi tongue death cult. Although, of course, the scope has expanded quite a bit. It's not only tongues nowadays. There is also the Mengele subset cult, represented in the middle here with the hypodermic needle. You can also see the Ku Klux Klan picture on the back tattoo. You see what is potentially a zombie Nazi wearing the helmet, wearing the stormtrooper helmet. So zombies are potentially involved in this as well. There's a lot going on here. You can see in that picture of Trump raising his fist that the Secret Service agent who was potentially in league with the shooter is hugging him for some reason. We don't know if that woman is trying to inject him with drugs, trying to kill him, what that woman is doing. Maybe she just loves him. We really don't know. But there's a lot going on with these modern day tattoos, and there's a lot of symbolism that unfortunately we simply don't have the information for here. But we have the Führer, we have zombies, we have the new Führer, and we have Dr. Mengele. So there's truly a lot going on here. Steph?
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of things going on. So maybe also to get back again to the Trump picture before with the tongue, and now we see a Trump tattoo. Maybe it was too obvious for the people from the society, and that's why they were actually trying to get rid of him in some kind of way. The same maybe also happened to Manson, because he was too obvious with carving an X or a cross on his forehead. So maybe also that's how they wanted to get rid of him as well. So I think, like I said, they need to be a little bit more cautious. Not we, sorry. But yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of confusion as well, because when we look closer and we see some of these other tattoos, of course we see the Pfizer tramp stamp, and I would assume that that is some kind of love or allegiance for Pfizer. But then we see this tattoo of Donald, and it's a little bit unclear what this person is thinking. On one hand, it's a picture of Donald Trump tattooed on a human body, made in America. Okay, that sounds good. That brings us back to the jewelry that we saw the Trump campaign selling earlier. That's a very positive message. Self-made, also very positive. MAGA, I think for the MAGA supporters, that's very positive. But that's not the most flattering picture of Donald Trump that I've ever seen. He looks angry. He looks like he's yelling. He doesn't necessarily look like that MAGA father figure that so many of his supporters are keen of. And it also seems like there is a goat on his head. You know, I'm thinking a couple of different things. Maybe that is a goat tying him to Satan, right? Because in a lot of satanic ceremonies, there would be a goat sacrifice, something like that. Or it could be a throwback to the early days of the tongue death cult when the members were meeting in the barnyards. And this could have been one of the animals giving cover for those Nazis, making a goat noise like, or however goats sound. So there's a lot of confusion here. There also seems to be a Freemason symbol, 33 degrees. And then there seems to be the eyes in the pyramid that you would find on money that might be associated with some other cult from the United States or from global. We just don't know. So that tattoo is very confusing. Steph, when you look at that tattoo, how do you interpret that?
That's a good question. You already mentioned the goats, which was really obvious for me to see. That was more or less the first thing I saw. And then also made in America, because these days everything is made in China. So they have to make it more like, okay, it's made at home where we are from. So we have to support our own country before we support somebody else or some other countries. So America first, and then all the other countries. For the self-made, well, self-made, you can make your clothes self, but you also, self-made also applies to, okay, self-made man, and that's what he maybe is, because he is a rich person. So there could be a lot of things. What do you think? What you can see in that picture? He looks a little bit evil, like you said as well in this picture, like yelling, and also his teeth look not really nice. It seems like he has some dirt on the teeth, feels like.
I have a theory about the teeth. So it looks like he's wearing braces. And what do braces do? They straighten your teeth. Straight. That could be a dog whistle to straight men in America, that he is going to straighten out all the queers. And he's using the symbolism of braces to do that. That's just a thought that I had. Straighten your teeth, straighten out them queers. It could work.
Yes, that could work, actually. You're right.
Yeah. And of course, he's also supporting Bitcoin, it seems, which is nice because it's good to have an alternative currency after the US dollar completely collapses. So, I don't know. There are some positive things about this image of Donald Trump, this tattoo. There are some negative things. I think only time will tell. But in conclusion, I think we can say that there is absolutely no doubt that Einstein is proud of America. Einstein would not be rolling over in his grave right now at the state of America. In fact, he would be very proud to see that his Nazi tongue death cult has progressed in this way and is continuing right through 2024, right through Manson, Gene Simmons, Donald Trump, and beyond. Steph?
You summed it up really well. Like, okay, Einstein, he's a figure everybody knows, and everybody's looking after. Everybody wants to be Einstein in some sense because he was so intelligent and he achieved so many things. So yes, and all those other peoples, they achieved some kind of acknowledgement as well, because like Manson, he went to prison and he was had his followers. Simmons as well, he has his big followers, like with all the fans. And Trump running as a president for the United States, he has even the biggest crowd who is following him, actually. So yeah.
Kiss could easily sell out Madison Square Garden. Trump could sell out Madison Square Garden. Manson, he had a lot of fans. He received fan mail right up until the day he died. And of course, Einstein, failed electrician, but always tried his best as a good Nazi. All right, Steph, that actually brings us to the final segment of our show, which is our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by none other than Bead Per Bead. We started this segment talking a little bit about pretty crappy jewelry coming from a Nazi. So let me ask you this. Do you like nice jewelry that's not from Nazis? If so, you should check out Bead Per Bead. I don't leave the house without my Bead Per Bead ring. And upon close inspection, it might seem like that's a Third Reich eagle on there. However, it's not. It's actually the hammer of Thor, because I'm a Viking badass mofo. So check out some of this fantastic artwork from Bead Per Bead. You don't have to get a Trump ear bandage. Oh, no. On the contrary, you can get earrings like this. Not 24 karat gold, not even made in America, but they're made with love. Don't you want to have some love on your ear? If you have Trump branded merchandise on your ear, you know there's no love in there. It's Nazis. You're supporting Nazi gold, which was probably stolen from Jews. All Bead Per Bead products are free of stolen gold. That counts for a lot, doesn't it? And look at these rings. What type of ring do you like? You can have your choice of rings. Reach out to Bead Per Bead and say, hey, I want a special customized ring. Maybe you want a SWAT sticker. That's fine. Maybe you want a smiley face. That's fine. Maybe you want Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor. That's also fine. But the point is that by the end of your night out wearing Bead Per Bead jewelry, you are going to get all the dudes, all the chicks, all the whatevers that you could ever desire. Look at that. Look at that craftsmanship. Look at that love. Look at that. Made with love and no Nazi gold. Not one piece of Nazi gold in any of this jewelry. It doesn't support Trump. It doesn't support MAGA. It supports a little jewel maker who's sitting at her little desk making happy jewels just for you. So go to Bead Per Bead today. Tell them Fun with Lund sent you, and I promise you, you will be super duper happy and you will be the most stylish person out on the street. With that, we are signing off until next week. Thank you. We hope that this was informative and that you learned something great about Nazis and Trump.
So we say, fuck
Kiss.
play.